Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Steer Clear podcast. We're here for episode 7, a pretty special episode here. We're here in the Steer Clear podcast war room. The war room here, we've got a few guys here to break down the Championship 4 and what you're going to expect to see on Sunday. I'll first welcome Wesley Riddle back for a fourth time. How's it going, Wes?
Oh, it's going great. Glad to be here for the 4th episode, and we've got a big show ahead to talk about this championship race.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And another returner, we've got Rob Prittie for a second time. How's it going, Rob?
Pretty good. Pretty excited. Big weekend ahead of us. 3 championships to decide.
You're right. We have to talk about the other 2 as well. And for the first time, we're going to welcome Stephen Rea into the Steer Clear podcast. How's it going, Steve?
Well, it's going good, man. I'm excited to join the podcast, and hopefully we can talk about all this news that's coming out today.
Yeah, you're right. There was a lot of other news that came out today. We'll probably bring that up here toward the beginning before we get into the major talk of the Championship 4 for the Cup Series. So I think it'd be fitting to start with the Truck Series, work our way up, Truck, Xfinity, Cup. So the Truck Series Championship 4 is kind of interesting. When you think of the Truck Series, you're thinking more young guys, the young guns supposed to prove themselves to get up into the Xfinity Series. And the youngest guy in the Championship 4 is 26 years old, that being Ross Chastain. So an interesting dynamic when you look at that. You've got Stuart Friesen. He's first time, in the Championship 4. Ross Chastain, Brett Moffitt, the defending champion, and Matt Crafton, a Trek regular for God knows how long. Going to be a fun race. I think the Trucks always put on a good show at Homestead, and hopefully that doesn't change. Open up to you guys, whoever wants to take it over. Who do you think, is going to win the championship?
I think you have to look at who's been probably the most consistent out of these guys this season. I think the 24 of Brett Moffitt, he's just been consistent. You look at the mile and a half, he's always up front. If he can just stay out of trouble, hopefully his truck stays in one piece. I think it's going to be hard to beat Brett Moffitt. Won last year, trying to defend his title from last year, go back-to-back. You want another guy to do that, another Championship 4 contender, Matt Crafton. But I think Brett Moffitt is going to go back-to-back. It's hard to beat that GMS truck.
I agree. I think Brett Moffitt's the guy to beat. He's done it last year. And he's in a truck that he beat last year for the championship. So we'll see how it goes. But I think he has to be the favorite. I mean, he dominated the race last year. He didn't even make it exciting. Crafton's been good at Homestead. It hasn't been maybe as good as Moffitt. And at the beginning of the year, I was thinking it was going to be a Ross Chastain Moffitt battle, and we definitely still have that option available. And I think that's probably what's going to come down to. My heart goes with Stuart Friesen because he's Canadian, but realistically, I think it's Moffitt's race or championship to lose.
And I have to agree with you on that. I think Moffitt going in definitely is the championship favorite. He's had a phenomenal year, quite a bit of victories to kind of back up what he was able to put together last year. And going for his 2nd championship in a row, which is definitely possible, seeing how strong of a team GMS is as a whole. But the entire Championship 4 is going to be tough to beat. Matt Crafton was able to sneak his way in. Unfortunately, doesn't have a victory this year, but he's been Mr. Consistent. We've seen him essentially in the top 10 almost every single race this year. Ross Chastain, the second half hasn't really been his best, but it's still been pretty solid for the most part. And he's always up at the front contending for victories, whether it be in the first or second half, just has had a little bit of bad luck. And Stuart Friesen, he's really kicked it into gear the second half of the year. Finally was able to get that first win at Eldora, win over the weekend at Phoenix. I think he's got a good shot. I think all of these guys do. But I can't disagree. My pick from the beginning of the year was Brett Moffitt. He's made it to the Championship 4, and I think he'll, like you both, will capture his 2nd championship win back-to-back, and we'll have to see where he goes for 2020.
Yeah, it's actually interesting if you look at the stats. Friesen and Moffitt have 12 top 5s and 16 top 10s apiece. Moffitt obviously leading the championship 4 and wins with 4. You got Ross Chastain with 3, Friesen with 2, and Matt Crafton does not have a win. Matt Crafton really did slip his way in there at Phoenix. Austin Hill looked like he was going to get in, but he didn't. Austin Hill had 3 wins too. So an interesting dynamic. If you look at top 10s, Ross Chastain leads the group with 18, but they all have either 18, Matt Crafton's got 17, and then, like I said before, Moffitt and Friesen with 16. So an interesting battle we're going to see. I think I'm going to have to go away from Brett Moffitt, and I'm going to go Stuart Friesen. I think Friesen's got a lot of momentum, being the only guy to win in the previous round. I think that's going to help him. He's proven that he's done a lot better, this year. I think if the team just doesn't make any mistakes like he did at the beginning of the ISM by, jumping the start, getting black flag for that, I think it's going to be hard to beat Stuart Friesen as well. But then again, this is, anyone's game because Matt Crafton's good at Homestead. Anything could happen with Matt Crafton. Don't count him out. Ross Chastain's been strong this year. He's got 3 wins. It's hard. This could be one of the toughest. I think this whole weekend is just tough to pick a champion for every series. I mean, you look at it. I guess Moffitt comes in as the favorite, being the defending champion and being in GMS equipment now this year. But I'm gonna lead towards Stuart Friesen. I think Friesen. I don't know, Friesen. I've just got that hunch. I think Friesen's gonna win the championship. I think it'll be a good battle. I wouldn't be surprised if these guys somehow finished 1, 2, 3, 4. I wouldn't put that out of the equation unless someone like a Ben Rhodes, maybe a Johnny Sauter, Grant Finger gets up there. But it'll be a fun race, I think. I don't know. I think the racing in the truck series never lets down, especially at Homestead. We've had some memorable finishes there. I remember it was back in 2011 with Cale Gale and Kyle Busch. Somewhere around there. I think it was 2011, maybe 2010. Or 2012, actually. I'm not sure.
2012, yeah.
I remember it.
Yeah, because 2012 or 2011, Kyle didn't race. That's right. So, yeah, 2012, good finish. Homestead's just a good track. I like it as a finale. Sucks that it's going away.
Yeah, and to add on your point about Stuart Friesen real quick, he should have more than 2 wins, in my opinion, on the season. Like, you look at tracks, I think going back to the Chicagoland race, he was really quick there. I think he was really quick at Kansas. Other mile-and-a-half tracks that have similar qualities. Homestead's kind of unique in its own sense. But you look at the 52 truck, Stuart Friesen, he's been quick at all the mile-and-a-halves this year. So it's really going to come down to, maybe a late pit stop, a late caution. The truck series is just going to be a wild show. And I think anybody can win it. Matt Crafton he's been consistent, but I think those 3 Chevy trucks have just been a little bit better than the Ford camp. But Matt Crafton, 2-time champion, it's going to be hard to beat him. And I know he wants that 3rd one really bad.
I want to say something quick about Matt Crafton. He doesn't have a win this year. He's the only guy of the 12 guys who could possibly win a NASCAR championship this upcoming weekend who have not won a race this year. And in this format, I don't believe we've seen anyone win the championship without winning a race since the installation of this format in all 3 top series. So there is the possibility of that, although unlikely.
And going off of that too, I think Ryan Newman was the only one that came close back in 2015. Right. Didn't capture a victory at all that year. Finished 2nd at Homestead, was able to squeeze his way in after that move on Kyle Larson at the very end at Phoenix that year, and almost had a chance. And Newman back in 2015 was probably the only, and I mean, there definitely could be somebody else that we're not thinking of, but from what I remember, and maybe what y'all remember, I think Newman might have been the last, and that was in 2015. So now we're coming into another year where Matt Crafton does have a good shot. And plus, it would be awesome for him, seeing that he's pretty late in his career, still consistently running in the top 5 and top 10, but just hasn't been able to get a championship in a while, but hasn't secured a victory in almost 3 years now. So look for Matt Crafton to be pretty motivated. He's coming out of a good team. Definitely going to have some tough competition though to battle with here in Homestead over the weekend.
Just got a stat correct you there, Wes. It was 2014 and Ryan Newman did it
2014.
because that was the first year of the playoffs, or the elimination format, and that's when Newman threw Larson to the wall in the last turn to get in, had Jeff Gordon out, and Newman just had to finish second somehow behind Kevin Harvick, the eventual champion, and now there's not much more to say about the truck guys. I mean, it's just 3 Chevys versus the Ford. Brett Moffitt probably the favorite. I guess we're all going with Brett Moffitt. I got store freeze, but the majority will take Brett Moffitt. So we're gonna say Brett Moffitt will win the championship. Hopefully, we're right. We can start the weekend right, and I think this is even a tougher call. Let's move to the Xfinity Series. You've got the 7 of Justin Allgaier coming in as the overwhelming underdog. And then you've got 3 guys who you probably can't even pick a favorite out of. The 20 of Christopher Bell, the 2 of Tyler Reddick, and the 00 of Cole Custer. All 3 of those guys now officially have Cup rides for next year. So this is their last chance to compete for an Xfinity championship. Tyler Reddick coming in as the defending champion. Definitely a lot of pressure on him. Christopher Bell with 8 wins this year, 15 total in the last 2 years. And Cole Custer with 7 wins this year. I mean, it would be very disappointing if they didn't walk away with the championship the way they've run this year. And I'll go to Steve. Who are you looking at as potentially the favorite? Who's your pick to win the championship in the Xfinity Series?
Well, I'm looking at Cole Custer as the guy to take this championship. 7 wins on the year. We look at the last 2 years at Homestead. He won in 2017 at Homestead and then finished second last year. Homestead is a track that fits Cole Custer. And with 7 wins on the year and the chemistry that his team and him are having right now, and a Cup ride for next year, I think he's just going to ride this big wave of momentum. Homestead really fits him. I look at Cole Custer to win the Xfinity Championship.
I'm going to go with the guy who Cole Custer finished second to last year. I'm going with Tyler Reddick. I think he goes back-to-back just for the simple reason he really likes Homestead, and he's been really confident this year in that RCR car. And, it's just one of his best tracks. It lines up perfectly for him. I see him going back-to-back.
Kind of like what Dom mentioned, I don't think there's going to be really a favorite coming into this race because so many of these guys have been so competitive over the year. Of course, it took Justin Allgaier until Phoenix just over the weekend to capture his first victory, but that victory was his 16th top 10 in a row, dating all the way back to Kentucky midway through the season. So Allgaier has really, really shown up this second half. He's been up there competing at the front for victories. Unfortunately, had a little bit of bad luck strike him at the beginning of the year, but he's been able to pull off a pretty solid second half of this season. But I do not think he's going to be a guy to contend for the victory. I think the big 3 are the guys that you're going to want to watch. And I am actually going with Cole Custer as well. I'm with Stephen here on this. I think that it's going to come down to either him or Tyler Reddick. I don't think it's anything against Christopher Bell. His winning percentage just in the Xfinity Series alone is 22%. And I actually saw that he's only behind Kyle Busch in percentage with wins, who has 27. And to think about all the races Kyle Busch has been in with not as deep of a talent pool, that shows how good Christopher Bell is. But I don't think he's fully fit there for Homestead yet. It's never really been a track to fit his style, even though you think it might, coming from a dirt track kind of background. But Cole Custer and Tyler Reddick both excel. I just think Cole Custer is going to have a little bit of an edge over Tyler Reddick in this race. Curious to see how Tyler Reddick does with a team change at the track. Plus, this second half hasn't really been as significant as his first. So I think Cole Custer is going to be able to show again his dominance at Homestead and come away with the victory.
It's hard to say. I want to say Tyler. I want to say Tyler Reddick, but my gut saying Christopher Bell this year. I think Christopher Bell. It's just hard for me to imagine Christopher Bell winning all these races and not coming away with an Xfinity Series championship. Last year, he admitted that having to win at Phoenix really kind of threw them off in preparation for Homestead. They didn't have, the comfort, they didn't have the comfort of prepping for Homestead like the other teams did, and they kind of missed the setup. So I think with Christopher Bell being, comfortably locked in this year, I think he's had a few weeks to get this this car ready. Jason Ratcliffe, one of the best crew chiefs out there in the Xfinity Series. I think it's the 20 car is going to hit it this weekend, and as long as they don't beat themselves, I think Christopher Bell will win the championship. And going in the next year, he'll try to be the first driver to win a championship in all three top series. So Bell, he's going to be strong early. We always, Bell is always strong early. He's got 22 stage wins. I mean, that's ridiculous. The next highest is Custer with 8. So Bell is going to be up there early. I think the only ones that could stop him are themselves.
Well, I think to add to that real quick, I don't think there's been a race this year where you've been looking, even Daytona and Talladega, where you can count Christopher Bell out. You know he's going to be up front every race. And 8 wins on the year, I mean, that's probably the most we've seen in a couple of years in the Xfinity Series. So Christopher Bell is going to be hard to stop. And if memory serves me right, of last year, he was up there in the top 3 most of the race, had a problem late in the race. Tyler Reddick went on to win the championship. But I think, like Wes said, this track fits Christopher Bell and his dirt background very well. It's going to be a battle between these 4 guys. Obviously, all guys, the dark horse in this, but 4 of the very best drivers in the Xfinity Series. All of them have a very good shot at winning this championship.
So, yeah, we got the majority of us picking Tyler Reddick. No, Custer, I think, right? I think Wes, you picked Custer.
I went Custer here.
So,
I think
we
it's
got
a 50-50 split.
Yeah, so we'll go Custer, Cole Custer, and we'll transition to that we're going to take a break from the championship hub, and we're going to talk about what was announced recently today. Cole Custer going to the, Stuart Haas Racing next year up in the Cup Series, replacing Daniel Suarez. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, they were trying to make a deal for Suarez anywhere from $7 to $10 million, and they just haven't found the sponsorship to cover him for the year. And big for Cole Custer because I think we were talking earlier, I think Rob said it, where Cole Custer's got nothing left to prove in the Xfinity Series. It would be pointless if leaving him in there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, what does he have left to do? He's proven he can win. It took him a while to get the winning thing down, but this year he's had a lot of wins, and he's won all different types of racetracks, which is another impressive thing to do. So I think Custer's ready. I think they're all ready. And I'm just really excited for next year's rookie class, to be honest. I think it's going to be one of the best battles we've had in a long time.
I definitely think it is going to be one of the best rookie battles we've seen in quite a few years, with the top 3 in the Xfinity Series all getting full-time Cup rides next year. That is going to be a huge, huge battle to watch all year long. I do hope Daniel Suarez finds the ride and lands on his feet. There have been a couple rumors floating out in the Twitter world today of him maybe landing with RCR on an Xfinity ride. I know with Tyler Reddick moving and taking over Daniel Hemrick's ride in the 8 car in the Cup Series, that leaves the 2 car in the Xfinity Series looking for a driver. I think it's all going to come down to sponsorship dollars. Daniel obviously carries some sponsorship money with him, and that could be a deal put together. There have been talks of him maybe going to Front Row Motorsports with David Reagan retiring at the end of the year. So there's a lot of doors open, and I hope Suarez finds a good ride for him, because he's really put together some good runs in the 41 this year, and it's just a shame that they couldn't get a deal put together for him.
Yeah, Suarez, oh, go ahead.
So, a quick question here, Steve. You bring up all those options. Now, say the opportunity comes for that front row motorsports ride, and he gets an Xfinity ride with RCR. Which one do you think he'll choose, though? Do you think he goes for the underfunded Cup ride or the well-funded Xfinity ride?
If I were in his shoes, I would go with the well-funded Xfinity ride. Every driver obviously wants to be in the Cup Series, but you look, front row motorsports is not a top level ride, and we've seen what Tyler Reddick's been able to do in this two car over the course of the year, win multiple races, and that, if Suarez goes back to the Xfinity Series, tries to win another championship there, it there might be something opening up in 2021. RCR might try to expand to 3 Cup cars in 2021. That's too far out to know yet. But if I were him, take a step back, go back to a well-funded Xfinity team, and basically go out and prove these people wrong. Why he should have been chosen for a good Cup ride or had something work out.
Yeah, I agree with Steven. It's there's only one of those 2 rides that you can get it and prove that you can win, and it's the Xfinity ride. If he goes into the underfunded Cup ride, he's just gonna ride around in 25th, 27th all year, and not really have many opportunities to show what he's got. It's just it's hard to do that in those cars consistently. So if he wants to prove and show that he can win, he's only really got one choice.
And to add real quick, you look at the Xfinity class for next year, and there's a lot of rookies coming up. And you look at Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, they're all going to the Cup Series next year. So those are 3 less guys that you have to worry about to try to contend with. You'll still have the core junior motorsports guys, Michael Annett, Noah Gragson, Justin Allgaier. But it's a good chance for Suarez to go back and really make a good run at another championship. So if I were him, I'd kind of weigh those options. If I were him, I'd do the Xfinity Series.
Oh, 100%. I was taking a look at some of his options. Unfortunately, he's a little bit limited because there's a lot of drivers that have already been selected for rides come the Xfinity Series for 2020. Junior Motorsports is filled up. Of course, Joe Gibbs is filled up. But the one team that we haven't heard anything yet from for 2020 is Richard Childress Racing. And a lot of the drivers that competed this year, besides Tyler Reddick, were part-time guys that we saw. And those 2 were Kaz Grala and Joe Graff Jr. And Kaz, he did fair, could have done a lot better. And we all saw how Joe Graff did in that 21 car. I'm pretty sure that we won't see a lot from that in 2020. So if he were to move down, I think that with these talks that he's been in with Richard Childress, if something doesn't materialize in the Monster Energy Cup Series, he should look into going maybe down with Richard Childress in the Xfinity Series and prove himself in, for example, the ride that Tyler Reddick had this year. And if he wins a championship, then it'll look even better for Hemrick, for Suarez taking over a ride that had just been used by the guy that won the championship. That is, of course, if Tyler Reddick does take it. But there is always the option that he could look into riding with Stuart Haas because the 00 will be open in Xfinity. But I think it would be hard for a guy like Suarez to lose a ride from a team you've only been with for a year and then be told to go to a lesser series and still be given an opportunity. That's like kind of getting downgraded at your job and said, well, we'll still let you work here, but we're going to put you on maintenance instead of being a manager. So it's just a pretty big difference, it would be a pretty big step down for Suarez if he were to do something like that, in my opinion. But I do think switching up teams and, as you all mentioned, trying to be able to prove himself, show him why they made a mistake in letting him go, going out there and trying to capture the 2020 Xfinity Championship, I think that'd be good. But if that doesn't happen, I think that Front Row could be a solid choice, and I'm only saying that because Front Row needs not only a driver but a solid boost in funds, and Suarez would be a great guy to bring in that sponsorship that could really help their team for 2020. Seeing that McDowell's a pretty solid driver, John Hunter Nemechek probably coming in for Matt Tifft in the 36. If that doesn't get taken, though, if there is no driver to replace Matt Tifft, then they could combine it would save them even more money. So Front Row Motorsports could have a pretty solid 2020, or at least an improvement if something like that were to happen. But Suarez has some options that he'll have to negotiate, and it'll be curious to see what happens probably within the next month and see where he ends up.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what Daniel Suarez decides to do and what he gets lined up. Yeah, like you said, you guys have said, I think going to the Xfinity Series with the RCR would be a big move for him. Definitely get some confidence back up and potentially, got some rides maybe opening up here in the next couple of years. Definitely got to be ready for it. I think he was rushed up and it was kind of forced because of Carl Edwards, shock of retirement. So I think he probably could have benefited with another year in Xfinity with Gibbs, but all in all, it didn't happen it didn't happen like that. So we can't really say if he had another year in the Xfinity Series, he'd be any better. So, a couple other things, Tyler Ankrum is going to race for GMS next year. That's some big news for him. It gets him in a better ride. His field be there full time. He made the playoffs this year. Missing missing some races early in the year. So big for Tyler Ankrum to maybe compete for a championship next year. And Kyle Busch Motorsports announced their driver lineup next year. Todd Gilliland's out of that Ford truck, and he's being replaced by Raphael Lessard. And then you got Christian Eckes in the 18 truck replacing Harrison Burton. I don't know too much about Raphael Lessard, honestly, so I'm not too sure how he's going to do in that Ford truck.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't really know a lot about Rafael Lessard either, besides the few times that he's running the truck this year. And I remember in those runs, I felt like he fared pretty well. Had a few runs in the ARCA series as well. Seemed that everything kind of suited him. But I noticed that Lessard came from more of kind of a dirt track and super late model background. So that could really help him on some of these tracks. And having already been partnered with David Gilliland for a while and that team, and now moving to Kyle Busch, who's of course is a good friend of David Gilliland's. I think that maybe that experience that he's learned from both of those two veterans of the sport could carry over and help Lessard succeed there in the Kyle Busch camp come next year. And we'll have to wait and see on his situation because he is pretty young. But we have to look at Christian Eckes too, another young fella, not even 20 years old yet, but he had a pretty solid year competing in the 51 car. Was able to capture quite a bit of poles and lead quite a bit of laps for a guy that wasn't only running a part-time schedule. And interesting enough, I believe Christian Eckes led more laps this year. I could be wrong, but then then Todd Gilliland and Harrison Burton, who were both full-time in the series. So pretty impressive for a guy, like I said, that's only part-time. Had a great run, of course, at Gateway back in the earlier part of the year, and is coming fresh off of the ARCA Menards Championship, the last year of ARCA. So good for Eckes. I think he deserved that step up for what he's been able to prove so far in the car. We'll just have to see if he's able to perform come 2020.
I like the
Yeah,
move.
it'll be
Go ahead, Steve.
okay. I think they're both good moves. It'll be. I think Eckes is going to be. We'll have to see kind of what the full truck lineup looks like next year. But I think Eckes is going to be one of the favorites. I think he's definitely going to turn that 18 truck around. We've seen Harrison Burton kind of had a few good runs out of there, but the 4 and the 18, Kyle Busch Motorsports has really kind of had a disappointing year as what we're compared or used to seeing from them. So I think Christian Eckes coming around, he's really going to turn that team around. I think he's going to be one of the favorites to win the championship next year. It's going to be tough to see. It'll be interesting to see where Todd Gilliland lands. I know his dad, David Gilliland, is a part owner of DGR Crosley. I've heard some rumors, I can't remember from who, of them possibly going to Ford next year. I don't really see that happening. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. I'm curious where Todd's going to land. There's no room anywhere at Kyle Busch or Joe Gibbs Racing. So he's kind of has limited options here, more limited than some of the other drivers we've been talking about.
Yeah, I like the move for Christian Eckes. I think he showed he's got some potential. Lassard really didn't see too much from him last year, so that's also an interesting move. But for sure, Eckes, I think he's a guy who could be in the top. Well, there you go. Top four. Coming to Homestead next year. An 18 truck is always good, and Kyle Busch Motorsports, they're going to want to get back to Homestead. Obviously, this year we don't have a Toyota in the Final Four, and the trucks for the first time in I don't know how long, probably ever. So they definitely want to get back.
Yeah, to follow up on that, Todd Gilliland, I think the biggest thing for him would be probably going to DGR Crosley, driving for his dad. I think that's the only option he's got, really. I can't see any other options out there for him. So, yeah, that's where you can't think of another ride for him. Meaning the whole Xfinity lineup is done at Gibbs with Herbst, Jones, and Burton. So, yeah, I see Kyle Busch Motorsports, stepping it back up next year. Definitely, I think Christian Eckes he's bound to get some wins. I don't think he's going to go winless, and Lassard will have to see what he does. And I think Wes actually has a crazy stat to tell us.
Yeah, I was taking a look just to make sure because I mentioned that I thought Eckes led more laps than the other two full-time Kyle Busch Motorsports teams or cars this year. That's actually a little bit incorrect. Todd Gilliland before Martinsville actually had less laps led than Christian Eckes, but before that victory or following this victory, Todd has only led 72 laps this entire year, which could, of course, be a lot better, especially in comparison to the rest of the field. Like, of course, Stuart Friesen, Grant Enfinger, Moffitt, Chastain, and even Kyle Busch. But Eckes, in just 7 starts, has led 64 laps. So that's only 8 laps less than Todd Gilliland. And unfortunately, the third Kyle Busch car that was full-time, or the second, full-time this year, but third with laps led, or the lowest, I guess, out of these 3 is Harrison Burton. He's only led 12 laps this year, and this is the guy that's going full-time to Xfinity in 2020. So Burton, he's going to have a lot to improve, seeing that he's only led 12 laps in an entire season driving with Kyle Busch equipment. But I think that shows that Christian Eckes, even though we haven't really seen a lot of consistency from not only schedule-wise, but finishing-wise for Christian Eckes, I think seeing that he's led this many more laps or this many laps in just 7 starts could definitely be a good sign for him. Dom, you mentioning you think that he's going to be able to capture a victory. I think he will. I think Christian Eckes will claim I'm going to go 2 victories when it comes to 2020. So I think Christian Eckes will have a pretty solid year, hopefully find the consistency that he needs. But I think from seeing what he's been able to do this year, it should definitely help him for the 2020 truck season year.
So I want to take it now to, probably what everyone's, listening for. Got to talk about the championship 4 in the Cup Series, the most important race this weekend. And what a star-studded championship 4 we've got. Got the 4 of Kevin Harvick. You got the 11 of Denny Hamlin, the 18 of Kyle Busch, and the 19. Yeah, definitely. Truex Jr. I mean, you couldn't pick a better 4 for this year. I think this is the first time where no matter who wins the championship, they will have rightfully deserved it this year. They are the top 4 in wins this year. They've been the most consistent all year. They've, just stood out from the rest of the field. And finally, this year, we're going to get a champion that, will rightfully deserve it no matter who out of the 4 it is. And that is just huge. So before we, get into predictions and everything, I want to break down each driver, one by one. And I want you guys to tell them, why that driver will win the championship and why they won't win the championship. I'll start with Wes with Martin Truex Jr. Why won't Martin Truex Jr. win this championship?
Man, it's going to be tough to come up with a reason why, because as you mentioned, Dom, all four of these drivers are going to be incredible threats to win the championship, and I think we're going to see probably the best championship battle we've had in a long time when it comes to the to the Monster Energy Cup Series. And I'm not saying that in terms of finish. I'm saying that in terms of where they're going to be running throughout the entire course of the race. I think these four are all going to be inside of the top five the entire day, switching and alternating for the lead and trying to battle and maybe also finish good. But I just think they're all going to be up front almost every moment of the race. But when it comes to Martin Truex Jr., I think a reason that he might not is because of the team he's driving for. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think when it comes to Joe Gibbs Racing, they're the best team in the entire sport. It's just the fact that he is going up against two of his teammates that know Martin Truex Jr.'s tricks, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Also, you could look at Kevin Harvick too, just because they've raced together for a long time, but more specifically, the fact that he's going up against two cars that come out of the same camp, that are going through the same guidelines and the same tech. Everything's going to be almost virtually identical. The only thing that's going to be different are how they are able to execute the team and the crew, and then the driver, how Martin Truex Jr. is going to be able to handle in the car. And unfortunately for him, he has a pretty solid average at Homestead, but he's only been able to secure one victory, and that was the championship in 2017. But that's my reason why not. I think that just being out of the same camp with two other drivers could be a down factor and maybe minimize his chances in comparison to if they were all different teams and he would have a better chance to strategize more. But when it comes to why I think he will win the championship, and he was actually my pick to win the championship, look at Martin Truex Jr. from 2015 to 2019 and what he's been able to accomplish. He's been able to be probably the most successful driver in NASCAR since his Furniture Row days to at where he stands at the moment. He's captured an incredible amount of victories. He's led an incredible amount of laps. He's been able to show us why, after all the years of him being with solid teams, but not the best teams, and not even claiming that many victories, we've been able to see why Martin Truex Jr. is a champion, why he claimed those two championships in the Xfinity Series, or Nationwide Series back in the day, why he's been able to win so many times. We're finally seeing that the driver that he really is, and this year has been he's proved it just by leaps and bounds, and especially since, like I said, in 2015, he's captured numerous victories this year. He's going for his 8th of the year. He leads in wins. He's led the second most laps, only behind Kyle Busch, 12,608, or excuse me, 1,268. And Truex, his just dominance and knowledge that he's been able to carry just with these past two teams, Furniture Row and Joe Gibbs, it's shown us why he's always a championship threat. And I think with where he stands now in his career, I think that he is in his prime, and I think that we're just going to continue to see him compete, not only compete for championships, but win championships. And I think that what we're going to see this weekend will be Martin Truex Jr. claiming his second championship, either by victory or by a second-place finish. I think Kyle Larson might be a big threat to win the actual race, but I think Truex is going to be able to take home his second championship here in the Monster Energy Cup Series.
Interesting points all around there. And we'll take it to Steve with Kevin Harvick. Why is he not going to win this championship?
Yeah, well, I think Kevin Harvick has to be one of the four favorites, obviously being in the Final Four. But you look at Kevin Harvick at Homestead, and it's just almost pure domination. I was looking at his stats here. Between 2003 and 2018, that's a 16-year stretch, 16 races run at Homestead. He has finished in the top 10 of those 16 years in the stretch. At Homestead, he's finished in the top 10 15 times. Only in 2007 finished 19th. But every other time he's finished top 10, 10th or better. including a win in 2014 when he joined Stewart-Haas Racing. Every year since then, since 2014, has finished in the top 4 at Homestead. This is a track that fits Kevin Harvick. He's run very well there. And this 4 team knows to get on a hot streak at the right time. Between Texas, Phoenix, and Homestead, the final 3 races, since joining Stewart-Haas Racing, he's finished in 6th or better in every final 3 race since 2014. This team knows when to get on a hot streak. Him and Rodney Childers is one of the best driver crew chief pairings. They know each other. Rodney makes great calls on the pit box. Looking at this year, Kevin Harvick in the playoffs alone has only finished outside of the top 10 one time, and that was Talladega. That's always a wild card race. But he's finished in the top 10 every other race, including the win a couple weeks ago at Texas, where he dominated the race. This very well fits Kevin Harvick. He's ran great. The first half of the year was a little bit slow. I think they were trying to figure out the new Mustang that came in. But when he got his first win of the year at New Hampshire, this team has been one of the most consistent week in, week out, going toe-to-toe against the Joe Gibbs cars and beating them a lot of the time. And I think you have 3 other Joe Gibbs cars in the Final 4. There's only one driver from Stewart-Haas. And if you think about all the employees at Stewart-Haas, they're going basically all chips in. They're putting all their resources and all their work into this one race car on the 4 team. Granted, Boyer and Almirola and Suarez will still be out there, but they're going all chips in on this 4 car. They have nothing to lose. They want to bring another championship back to Stewart-Haas Racing. However, I think Kevin Harvick, why I don't think he could win the championship, he's also going up against 3 Joe Gibbs cars, like I mentioned a second ago, and those 3 guys are very, very fast at Homestead. Martin Truex winning a couple of years ago and finishing 2nd last year. Kyle Busch is always up there, and it's one of Denny Hamlin's best tracks too. It's going to be really hard to beat those 3 if he can minimize pit road mistakes, because the 4 team has been known to make some pit road mistakes. If they can minimize that, it's going to be really hard to beat Kevin Harvick.
Yeah, definitely. Kevin Harvick, definitely one to look out for, being the one guy, odd man out with the Gibbs guys there. And, going into to more Gibbs guys, go to Rob with Kyle Busch. Why isn't he going to win this championship?
Kyle Busch is going to win this championship because, well, 1, he hasn't won in about 20 starts now, which you don't see very often from him. And 2, he's angry. You can see he's mad. He wants to win. And an angry Kyle Busch and a driven Kyle Busch are usually a deadly combination, or they can be as long as he keeps his tempers about him. They just need to put a race together. They can put a good race together, they'll be up there. They haven't put a good race together all chase long, but that doesn't mean they can't do it now when it matters. It's only this race that really matters now that they're here. We've seen that. I mean, Logano, he put his best race of the whole year together in Homestead last year, and it's just that one race. So if Kyle Busch can just be focused, forget about the last 19 weeks, and just go out there and do what he knows that team's capable of, then he's got a great shot. Why he won't win the championship is because he has to beat 2 of his amazing teammates, Truex and Denny, who have been incredible the entire season, and Kevin Harvick, who has been one of the best cars the second half of the season. So he's got a great chance to win it, but his competition, like we've talked about, is the toughest it's ever been, and the other guys are just too good. So that's why he will not win it.
And I will go for Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin, he's going to win this championship because it's his year. This year is just for him. He's the only guy in the championship four that hasn't won a championship. He should have a championship already. He doesn't. This year has just been different for Denny Hamlin. Last year it looked like Denny Hamlin's career may be coming to a close, and this year he's come out with Chris Gabehart on the top of the pit box and has just dominated this year with 6 wins. And last week, in a must-win situation, came out and just dominated at ISM. I think that's just more momentum for him. He knows he can win when he has to, and that team is just ready to win the championship. If we want to look at some superstition, you know, he's, with the passing of JD Gibbs, in the off season, he ended up winning the Daytona 500, and now he's going to Homestead. And Joe Gibbs said now JD's going to Homestead, so JD's definitely along for the ride in that 11 car. And on Sunday, or Denny Hamlin's birthday, which is the day after Homestead, the date is 11/18/2019. So you've got all 4 Gibbs cars numbers in that date with the 11 coming first. So it seems to have all been lining up. Hamlin's flight to get into Homestead, the arrival time was 11/11. So it just seems like, and Denny Hamlin's attitude this year is it's just all pointing towards a championship for Denny Hamlin. He got asked last week before Phoenix, how would you feel being this generation's Mark Martin? And he said he's fine with it. And Chris Gabehart found this out and said he shouldn't be fine with that. He got mad. Chris Gabehart got on Denny for that. And Chris Gabehart's not accepting anything but defeat this year. He is going out there. Chris Gabehart knows that team is going out there and going to win the championship. Now, for the reason why Denny Hamlin won't win the championship, I think there's 2 reasons why. I think the pit crew, they are susceptible to mistakes. They have not been on top of their game, the last few races. I think the 18 and the 19 crews have been better. So the pit crew is going to have to step up. The teammates, maybe Truex is just really good at Homestead. Denny Hamlin does have the most wins out of all of them. That's 2 wins, but he hasn't won since 2013. Denny Hamlin's won 3 of the last 4 polls. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, Chris Gabehart coming here for the first time as a Cup crew chief. We'll see if he can get the right setup. But yeah, I think the crew and potentially his teammates will be the reason why Denny Hamlin won't win the championship. So now, and do you guys think that there's any chance a non-playoff driver wins the race?
No.
I do. I do think that there is a chance.
I mean, you got to look at Kyle Larson. There's no other
exactly
guy
what I
that's
was
going
gonna
to get
say.
around Homestead better than Kyle Larson. I think all of us can agree that he's going to be up front. And for him, I mean, why should he shouldn't. He's already good enough there. He shouldn't have to worry about getting in the way because he's going to be on the outside line higher than everybody else on the track. So he's going to be staying out of everybody's way, just going a little bit faster. So I think Kyle Larson, I mean, they've got to get the car right, of course, but I think if anybody wins that's not one of the final 4, it's 100% Kyle Larson. And if not him, I'm not sure who else it would be.
I don't think anybody out of the top 4 is going to win. I don't think this package suits Kyle Larson as much as Homestead as it has in the past. There's way more on throttle time continually throughout the run in this package, and his advantage has been able to stay in the throttle longer over the long run. And this year, he's just not going to have as big an advantage with less drop off, and it's going to take him longer into the run to get that high line going as it would have been past years with less tire wear, as we've seen this year.
I still think Larson's going to be up there in the top 5 most of the race. The past couple of years, he's been one of the most, if not the fastest car every year since this style of the playoffs has been implemented. The driver that has won the race has also won the championship. So we haven't seen a non-Final 4 driver win the race in this style of the playoffs yet. But if anybody's going to spoil that and change that statistic, I think it's going to be Kyle Larson. This is one of his best tracks. And I know he's hungry for that first Homestead win. I remember a couple of years ago when he won that Xfinity race, you could tell how relieved he was, but just how hungry he was to get a win there in the Cup Series.
Yeah, definitely. I think Kyle Larson's definitely one to look for. Call me crazy. I think William Byron, he's going to have a good car this week. I think William Byron's going to end this season on a strong note. Why not count out William Byron? He's been improving. He's the top Hendrick guy right now in points. And I think maybe, there's going to be a little battle between him and Chase Elliott. And I think William Byron wants to be that top Hendrick guy. You know how much confidence that brings you if you're the top guy points wise for Hendrick Motorsports in your second year? That's insane. So I'd watch out for William Byron. I think Chad Knaus, he's learned, he's done enough of these races at Homestead. I think William Byron's one to look out for as well. And now, the biggest decision now, who wins the championship? And if you have someone else winning the race, just let me know who wins the race as well. All right, we'll start with Steve. Steve, who wins the championship?
As much as I defended Kevin Harvick and as good as a shot I think he comes up one spot short, I have the 19 of Martin Truex Jr. winning the championship and the race.
Wes, who we got?
I think I've been in agreement with Steven the entire podcast. My pick is Martin Truex Jr. I just think that this year has been phenomenal for him. I think it's been almost equivalent, maybe not as much, of course, seeing that other guys have been competitive, but almost as strong as his 2017 championship season. I think that Truex has finally figured Homestead out to the point that it is now one of his better tracks on the circuit. And I think he'll be able to maybe just have a little bit of an edge over the field and be able to secure his second Homestead victory and his second championship. But if it's not him, I think I'd have to lean Denny Hamlin. I think Denny Hamlin's going to be a tough cookie.
And Rob?
Well, I'm between Truex and Harvick, but I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick because I think they're the only team by themselves, and they're obviously the three Gibbs cars. They got nothing to lose. I think they're going to go out there and trim out that car as much as humanly possible and just try to hope to keep track position like they did at Indianapolis. I think that's their best option. I don't think if they try to go the same kind of downforce that maybe they assume the Gibbs guys will go with, I don't know if they'll have the shot. I think they have to go all or broke here. So I think Harvick goes out there and keeps his track position all day, qualifies. I think Harvick's going to win the pole too. And I think Harvick will win the championship.
Well, there's not much for me to differ from. I've got Martin Truex Jr. winning the championship. I think, first year in the 19 car. The 19, there's some karma for the 19. Back in 2016, the 19 had the championship won till a late caution and a crazy restart took him out of the race. So I think the 19's do some karma, and I think the 19's going to win the championship. Martin Truex Jr. most wins this year. I just can't let what happened last year, go, and they're going to come out, and I think they're just going to dominate the race. I don't even think it's close. I think Martin Truex Jr. leads 223 laps and wins the championship. I think it still comes down to a late race restart, but Truex, they know this time they can't be waiting on that long run car. They know they'll make sure their car is good all the way around. It's going to be strong all day, and no one's touching the 19 car. So that's who I've got. If anyone else have any final thoughts about Homestead?
I look for Denny Hamlin to be fast too. I know none of us really brought him up other than what you said earlier, Dom, but I really think you look at Denny Hamlin from all the way to the Daytona 500 to right now. I think this has been arguably a career year for Denny Hamlin, putting together all those wins and being as quick as he is. We looked at the first half of the season and it was the Kyle Busch, Martin Truex show, but now in the second half, it's really been the momentum has really kind of shifted over to Denny Hamlin. I look for him to maybe sneak through and finally get his first championship. I'm still sticking with Martin Truex. I think all the success that him and Cole Pearn have had, but I think arguably it's been a career year for Denny Hamlin. I'm happy to see that he's getting the success, and hopefully it's not another Mark Martin story.
I think the only thing that I wanted to add was the fact that I don't think anybody's mentioned it yet, but this is our final season closure at Homestead Miami.
It is, yeah.
once we head to next year, it'll be at ISM Phoenix, which was, of course, the second to last race of the year for the past few years. And Homestead has, I've heard a few people say this, but it's been the home for a lot of people since their beginnings of watching the sport. A lot of younger race fans and fans that are our age started watching somewhere between 2001 or 2002-ish and 2000 maybe 6-ish. And Homestead has been the home since 2002. So if you look at it that way, we've always been so accustomed to this being the final race of the year. Now we're making a pretty big change, and we're going to see it somewhere different at a track that is totally different from Homestead. So it'll be a pretty sad moment, I think, for some people, seeing that this will be the final race of the year, because it was always kind of classic that we started in Daytona and we ended in Daytona. And now we're starting in Daytona, of course, keeping it the same, but now we're finishing out in the West. So it'll be a lot different for fans. I think this will be a really special race, and I think, as we've talked about, all four of these drivers are hungry, but imagine how it would be to be the last driver to go down in the history books to win at Homestead, Miami, the final race of the championship being at this track. So I think it'll be a really special race for every single series, of course. And I think we're going to see a really phenomenal weekend from the trucks to the Xfinity and, of course, in the Monster Energy Cup Series.
Yep, a good farewell to Homestead, and it'll be interesting. We're going to be racing this weekend there, and then, we'll be back there in April, basically, or late March, so it won't be too long.
Yeah, going to be a fun race, definitely. I think this package will lend to some better racing. I think clean air may not be as important. It'll still be important, but, with Homestead being one of those tracks with multi-groove racing, you can get that, car out of the dirty air, poke your nose into some clean air. Should produce some great racing. Definitely watch out for that late race restart. Anything could happen there. That last pit stop of the season, definitely the most high-pressured moment of the year for the pit crews. Watch to see if those pit crews can keep cool under pressure. But other than that, I want to thank Wes, Steve, and Rob, you all, for joining me tonight for our championship preview episode.
Yeah, appreciate you having us on.
Oh, yeah, it's been a great episode.
Definitely episode 7, the biggest episode, obviously. We're going to find out who wins the championship this weekend. Hopefully our prediction, maybe we're wrong. I think I've predicted one winner right this year. I think Wes is back-to-back. No, you didn't pick Denny Hamlin last week. No one picked Denny Hamlin.
I was back-to-back, I think, before.
Is that right?
I think that's right. I think I was back-to-back with picks, and then not last week. So this will be, I'm picking Truex, so I'm trying to get the 3rd out of 4. So keeping my 75% streak alive.
But yeah, after this week, we'll recap the championship next week, and for the off season, we're gonna. I've been fuddling with some ideas of what to talk about. Maybe doing some season reviews back from the 2007 season or something. Maybe just talking about some drivers, in their careers. We'll figure that one out. Maybe put a poll up and see what you guys want to listen to. But other than that, hopefully we see some good racing this weekend at Homestead. It all starts tomorrow. Well, today, since the episode will be posted on Friday. This whole weekend should be fun. Don't miss any of the racing this weekend, because you'll miss out on potentially something special. Again, thank you guys for joining me today. It's all part of Belly Up Racing and Belly Up Sports. Thank you all for watching, and have a great race weekend.